Hey everyone, I have a really exciting show for you today. I have a couple that is very active in the multifamily landscape. So we're definitely going to talk about that. But I really like what they're putting out around mindset, right? All of us are dealing with this health event. And this couple is really putting out some good stuff to kind of make sure we're all still moving forward. Mindset, fitness, health, inspiration, motivation. So let's welcome Jason and Peely to the show. How you two doing?
Doing great. How are you?
So good. So honored to be here. Thank you,
Oh,
Michael.
thank you for all that both of you are doing. It's not very often you can count on a couple being motivational all the time. There's so many folks out there that just want to complain or point at all the negatives. And you know what? Let's talk. Let's try to switch that. So that's what I love about what you two are doing.
Thank you.
Again, it's what's going on in your mind. Yes, sometimes negativity hits us.
Mhm.
Sometimes we talk to people and they're like, it's all negative, and we have to kind of like take a moment and reflect and take it in and remember to answer with kindness and positivity and a smile. And if you can't, then I find myself, I'll wait until the negativity passes, because we're all human.
Yeah.
It's the negative will hit us.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, do you want to promote more negativity? I mean, there's too much of that already. So why not promote the positive? I mean, we learn in school, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. So
oh man, well, social media would explode if that happened.
Exactly. Social media probably wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
If that were true, right?
You also find that people that usually have a negative approach, they're dealing with something themselves, right? So ultimately, you have to say that I'm not going to be able to fix, across Twitter, a conversation with someone, right? I can be honest in my own approach, be positive in my own approach, and I can only control what I think, what I say, how I act, and what I do, and that is where I can be myself, and then hopefully others, they can make the choice to do something in their own right to be positive instead of focusing on the negative. But that's why news is still an attractive media outlet, because if it was that happiness and good things and saving cats out of trees was something that draw news, we'd see more of that. But unfortunately, it's not, right? So and that's what draws it to it. So the more you can close that off, close the news, close things around you that are negative, that don't really, that you have no control over, and you can just honestly focus on what is your core principles. Well, that's what we try to do to ourselves, and that's how we see people that really align with the vision that we're after.
And do I think we're gonna like switch people's mindsets like that? Do we think that we're so almighty and powerful that somebody's gonna see one video that we pushed out and they're all of a sudden gonna have this like positive rainbow outlook on life? No, that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to show people that there is another way.
Yeah.
You can try and do what we do every day. You can try your own version, but the thing is, we just try and put it out there. And if people want to follow, then great. If not, then maybe next time.
Yeah. And really what I like is, you're not forcing on anyone, but it's the consistency, right? Because you never know when that window is open. There are lots of times in life, or days or weeks or months, where your door is closed to new things, but you never know when it opens. And by being consistent in your approach and putting it out there, it's going to grow, and the momentum is going to it's going to build and grow from there. So very awesome. I'd be remiss, we'll do this again at the end, but how can people follow you guys, get a part of this, just being positive and all of that? How can they do that? We'll hit it now and hit it again at the end.
Yeah, so you can go over to the Jason and Peely Project. That's our podcast, talking mental fortitude, improving health, and growing wealth. We talk on a lot of different topics there, a lot of real estate too. And then Jason Yarusi and Peely Yarusi at on IG.
Everywhere.
So yeah,
Everywhere.
pretty much everywhere. But if you want to go over to IG, get a lot of what we're doing.
And of course, go to YouTube, subscribe, and you can get all the goodness there. We post everything goes there.
Awesome. So this is a real estate investing channel. So let's at least talk about that real quick. Where do you guys play? Yeah, just a little bit in the multifamily space. What do you do? We'll talk about that, talk about how you get started, and then we'll get into mindset, because I do want to spend a fair amount on that. But let's talk.
Sure. So we're currently in New Jersey. so when we first started, we come from a heavy construction background, so that's family business. It transitioned into more transactional real estate. He was a real estate agent, still is actually a real estate agent, doing flipping, wholesaling, Airbnb here locally. But we were just adding and stacking on jobs instead of looking at what we wanted to do, which was find a fulfilling life that allowed us to choose our day instead of being driven by some activity, right? So
one day I went to an REI meeting and I met a gentleman that did turnkey, and I was like, no, I don't want to do turnkey. But he was like, no, come on, look at these deals that I have. And I went to Jason. He was like, well, ask him if he has any duplexes. I was like, okay. So he sent me some duplexes, showed it to Jason, and we're just like, well, these numbers make sense if we do it the way we want to do it. So we basically treated him like a wholesaler and then used him as our property management. These were properties in Indiana. Jason actually went to Indiana, went and took a look at the properties, made sure it was a sound investment, came back, and we ended up doing 2 duplexes with these guys. Yeah. And of course, Jason, with like this huge, like reaching of craziness mindset, comes to me one day and he's just like, Peely, if we can do 2 duplexes, imagine if we can do 50, 100, 2,000. I'm just like,
I think now that you said it that the one thing that stood out is that we come from restaurant bar background, where we took a bar that was doing it had a couple hundred people that would come there on a Saturday, up to one that would have 25,000 people come, and we knew on the operations there. The bar was so big that one year we were the most Corona sales, ideal timing, but the most Corona sales in the world. We were only open in the summer, so within 3 months we outsold every bar in the world what they were doing for the year, right? So we learned how to take that and say, okay, how can we do this and scale this, right? And find the practice in the system. So ultimately, that's the same thing with multifamily. People say, well, I want to do multifamily, well, maybe I'll start with a 4 unit or 6 unit or 8 unit. But ultimately, your leverage and your economies of scale go bigger with the larger property, right? Being able to afford staff, being able to get better debt terms, being able to now afford more practices that are going to scale based on what you can do to that bottom line. But we get scared into this thing that, small is safer. And generally, as you can throw that out and look at, a core business like anything, right? So if you're still going to have the same setup, right? So you got something broken, you're still going to need a maintenance person. Okay, so I can afford the maintenance person on a 4 unit, or I can afford the maintenance person on a 100 unit. So of course, it's going to play in my advantage that I do it on a 100 unit. Well, it's the same thing like manufacturing, right? So you have a manufacturing plant, and all of a sudden you can store only 100 products, but you still have to make to keep up to a demand of 1,000. Well, it'd be better to have one that would store 2,000, so you could ramp up demand as you go.
So Jason, help me understand the time frame. When did you go out to Indiana and check out these couple of duplexes? Was that like 2016 or 2006?
Yeah, so it was 2015, 16. We actually hold a couple of those properties for about a year, sold them at a massive gain. And just because we knew we were going all in, jumped into large multifamily 2016, really just getting ourselves fully indebted. And what is the process? What are the steps? Who are people that are doing it successfully, taking that next step? And then in mid 2017, we brought a 94 unit.
Wow, very cool. And just so I'm clear, when you say sold those first couple of duplexes, was it really a sale or was it a 1031 exchange?
No, we didn't 1031 them. They were not massive, but we just sold them. We just said, okay, let's just move. On that point, we didn't want to have something where we're stricken to have to make a decision quick. We knew we were moving in, so it's like, okay, let's cash in our chips. And now we're going all into this space here. Cool. So no reason to force our hand, because the same principle as before is that we're always passively aggressive. We want to know the parameters, right? But you have to be willing to take action, but you have to know the steps, right? So you have to know where you're going, and then you can map out the steps from there. Where sometimes the thing that sets people wrong is that they'll jump into any kind of real estate, but do the last step, first. Like, I'll just make an offer. Well, okay, so what are all the steps in between? And they get pushed into a position where, well, that deal didn't go great, or I got into a bad position there because they haven't laid out at least the spaces that they need to touch to get there.
And the thing is, those 2 duplexes, they incredible ROI, and we like Jason said, sold them an incredible gain. But we had to make the decision on what avenues we were going to do, because we were wholesaling, we were flipping, we were doing retail. We basically had these buy and holds that were in Indiana. And then we had just started getting into large multifamily. And plus, I think at that point we were on our second child. So we had so many things happening. So we really had, again, mindset. We really had to really focus in and decide what we wanted to do. So the gentleman that we were working with at the time, he was like, do you want to buy more? And basically Jason and I said, no. He was like, well, can I buy them from you? And we were like, yes. So he ran the numbers. Wow. He knew what he was getting into. He knew how much money we were making. And we made a really great return on that. Nice. And just took the next step forward. And then in 2018, like the end of 2018, we actually decided to stop flipping, stop wholesaling. And we went full force into large multifamily, so much so that we had changed our podcast at the time from the Real Estate Investing Foundation to the Multifamily Foundation. And now it's the Jason Peely Project.
Nice. Well, so let's go through that evolution. Let's talk about that first deal in 2017. Was it 94 units?
Correct.
Yes.
Where was it? What was it like? Was that your first deal, or were you a GP and there were LPs behind you? Or let's talk about the first deal. People always like that.
Sure. So yeah, 2017, 94 unit, Louisville, Kentucky, in the South Central submarket, down by some of the FedEx, GE are down in that area there. It was one of the markets we started looking in markets in North Carolina, transitioned over to Louisville, Kentucky. I was the lead general partner on there. I had one other partner on the deal. I got into it, just had a ton of operational upside, both sides, right? So just an owner who had passed away. He had a bunch of older kids who were in their 50s and 60s living out of state. They weren't interested in keeping this property because it was their sole multifamily. It was a 94 unit. They had about 1,000 single family houses and they wanted to keep those. They thought that was going to be an easier point. We actually had offered a price of like 2.1 million back in like almost 6 or 8 months prior. And what had happened is they had disregarded that, came and countered back at their original asking price of 3.2 million. And we just said, thank you, but we're just way too far apart. No counter at all. Just like, nope, that's our price. And it seems like they had gotten that price because someone had told them that's what it worth, right? So they were assuming that someone must know on this point. So the thing that our advantage is we track the deals that we offer on. So 5 months later, we just went back to this deal. We said, oh, I wonder what happened with that deal. Reached out, found it was still out there, still on the point, came in there and we raised our price about $50,000. And all of a sudden they cut their ask from 3.2 million down to 2.6 million because now they had gotten the clarity that the market spoke. And with time, now they got more realistic in what they wanted to do, right? They didn't want to control this property. And now they're understanding here that the market's not just going to throw them a number because of just hope, right? So over the course of like a month and a half, negotiated back and forth, we ended up closing it. They started at 3.2 million. We closed it at 2.3 million. So it was a huge home run for us. It was the lowest trade in the submarket in the past 5 years. And it was just the owner who had passed had built the properties. So they were, generally you'll get a property that's in really good shape. So we had 5 buildings across 94 units, all on the same street right there. We became the largest group on the street. And we had everything from, if you walked across the street to the same kind of building, you would just magically pay $100 more. It's a 2.5% to 3% vacancy in the submarket. And we had 7 units that were rent ready, but they weren't leasing because the leasing person was not engaged. They were also having a problem with collections, but you found the leasing person couldn't collect rent. So you actually had to take it to another office 4 or 5 miles away. They had 2 laundry rooms of the community, which was 600 units. They had 2 laundry rooms and neither of them were working. So now they have 2 laundry rooms that aren't even servicing their building, but couldn't service the rest of it, right? Very poor screening processes, no application fees. They weren't accepting pets. Everywhere else did accept pets. When we did our due diligence, they had 6, it was like 5 or 6 dogs and a snake, right? So they had them in there even though they were accepting them. And it was just a laundry list, right? So there was no like big bank here where it was like, it was everything, right? And that's sometimes in the properties, like, could we go in there and just increase the rent? Sure, but there was all these other ancillary items that were just huge little home runs. So we were able to do that, use the basements that were full of junk. We made them into storage units, and for for about $3,000 for 10 storage units. We were getting $25 a month on those.
Yeah.
And it was intended to be, it was a syndication, it was intended to be a 7-year hold, but we actually just sold that in January at beating our investor returns on a 7-year hold and that quickly. So it was a very beautiful property for us to get into. Love to have more of them.
Yeah.
But it allowed us to really form out our business plan. What we were to do there, we had some nice implementations. We actually changed out all the toilets. So like, here's a point where large multifamily works, right? So original toilets in there, 3.8 gallon toilets. We were to put low E flush toilets, that and some tenant practices, making sure we're taking care of all the leaks and all the faucets, cut our water bill by 30%.
Wow.
That amassed for something of about $350,000 of increased value to the property just by changing toilets at the cap rate.
Mm-hmm.
So some things on that magnitude that allowed us to really scale the property by just doing more of the efficiencies with the property, improving the landscape and cleaning it up, making people know it's a better place to live. And then ultimately, after we start doing all those parts, now the tenant base, of course, now it's pretty easy to go back and increase rent, right? You're still going to be under market from the surrounding properties and you're a better product.
Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. Well, first off, I took from that is you, I mean, rightly or wrongly, sometimes it's great to be lucky rather than good. Selling in January turned out to be a very nice time to sell.
Yes.
Yeah. In hindsight, I look like a genius, but that was,
You are a genius. Come on, Jason. Come on.
I was sitting there. I was actually watching the trends around the neighborhood, and it had transitioned in 2.5 years into a different neighborhood than it had been the previous 10. And to look at that, we were getting really those $100 to $150 rent bumps with classic upgrades, and neighboring properties started doing premium upgrades. We hadn't accounted that in the business plan. It was never the business plan. They came and sold at a very good number. And I believe they were the best comp for us for over the next 5 years when we would sell. Sure. But the group bringing it on was not going to sell in 5 years. So now I didn't have a good comp set that I was going to be able to push off. And there was a couple things pushing against us. So I said, let me go out there and test the market. We were able to sell that off market by really just testing it to, building your network, right? So putting it out there, and there was a group that came in that now positioned to do the premium upgrades, and hopefully they'll capture on that side of it.
There you go. I'm just curious, in 2.5 years, the NOI went up, what, 70%? I'm just guessing, right? Because you took care of the top line and the bottom
about
line.
60 to 70%, give or take. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of
cap
that
rate compression. I mean, that's.
Yeah, we actually, I think we were down a 0.25, something like that from where we brought it.
1.25 or 0.25?
Yeah, 1 point. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
1.2.
1.25, and we walked into a deal that had very high expenses.
Sure.
They had 3 maintenance people for a site that really could be a 1 or a 1.5.
Yeah.
So they were accounting for them, even though some of those maintenance people were servicing some of the single family homes. So there was just a ton of ways. And that's where it's super important for people that want to do large properties. You need to know what it is to operate the property on a good way and a bad way, right? Because you're not going to be too low and you don't want to be too high, right? Because you're either going to be, way overpriced for what you need to do to maximize it, or you're going to be a slumlord. And there's almost no in between. So knowing that number, you can go in, because then you can look at your rent and say, okay, well, can I get enough rent to create returns and pay my debt service? Or am I going to be stuck at a point where I in the best case, it will run like this, but it's never the best case.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that Jason hasn't mentioned is another reason why the neighborhood changed is because we helped change it. We took care of our tenants. I'm huge on listening to tenants. And when they ask for something, you make sure you listen. So the tenants were complaining about the crime in the area. So we happened to have a free unit, which we let the local police department take over. They did a sting operation on the neighboring building. Nice. And they actually took down the crime level in the neighborhood, which not only, provided safety for our building, but for the surrounding buildings. So awesome. I believe we were very, very instrumental in helping raise the neighborhood.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Again, you gave that up. I'm guessing probably didn't get any rent for that building. You just let them use it and took care of the problem, and thus raised all ships.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually were able we were doing a turn on a unit and the neighboring property, it was a city-owned property. So they were facing the same thing, like, right, trying to solve
Yeah.
a problem. So it worked perfectly, right? But it's worth it, right? If it took us 2 months but we don't have a
Oh,
building
for
that's
sure.
scarce,
Yeah.
right? It's worth every penny.
Yeah. Shoot, you'd have done that for 6 months. No problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious, just given that awesome track record and the fact that we both agree that you're a genius, Jason, for selling in January, just so you
I'll
know.
take it.
I think the multifamily landscape, I don't know, has changed, at least with this event, right? I think it's going to go on longer than people expect. I think unemployment in most markets is going to hold higher than it was before it. I'm curious, right? You're probably sitting on a bunch of capital now, right? You had a great exit in January. What are you seeing out there? Because multifamily, I've been doing this 20 years. Multifamily slower evolving because of the way debt's financed, right? You got IO periods, and you have some people have 3-year bridge loans, and some are 10. It just reacts differently. And I think we're in a big price discovery mode. So are you seeing price deterioration already, or is it just too early?
No, honestly, for the majority of properties, I mean, we're on our other properties there, we've been super strong in collections. We're 96
Yeah,
to 99% in collections,
me too.
and we're
Yeah,
even stronger in May than April.
yeah, me
And
too.
now some of these, yeah,
Yeah,
and some of the properties there, which serves well, right? Because you get a $1,200 stimulus check and unemployment in Louisville compared to, where we are in New Jersey, where people are paying 2,000-3,000, whatever it is in rent.
yeah,
It's a whole different scenario, right? So that the
sure.
blanket of it, has worked in certain markets to help. I don't think that there will be some, trickle out of some owners facing difficulties, but it's definitely too early to tell. And for some states where it's going to take longer to come back on, the New
Hmm.
Jerseys, the New Yorks, the
Yeah,
Californias, where, it's a still TBD, right?
right.
Where if you have states, Texas, Florida, even Kentucky, some of the restaurants open back up, then that's going to be, plus it's also going to trend to what your tenant base is going to be, so we aren't heavily aligned in retail or restaurant or, or
Right.
hospitality in our properties. And that helps because even if they do go back to work at a restaurant, I don't know how busy they'll be, but they're also maybe at 30% occupancy based on keeping whatever the new rules are going to be. So you're
Right.
going to look at that and say, okay, with multifamily, you do have this point where it's going to be resistant.
Sure.
I don't think anything's going to salvage, like completely starve off
Hmm.
recession, but it's going to be resistant. And the thing that may change is you may see rent decline, but we're not going to, the country, and it's a point you'd have to look on a thing. Well, if we have 30 million, 36, whatever it is of people that
Yeah,
are out of a
36
job,
as of this morning.
as of this morning. So you take all that, they can't all go homeless, right? Because that will
Right. No.
change. 10% of the world can't be living under a
Yeah.
bridge. So on that point, there's going to be some capacity that they're going to stay in homes, right?
Yeah,
And
for
where
sure.
what's going to be safer, them living in a home or living in an apartment where maybe they can have a little more leverage here, where they're not carrying the cost of all the taxes and everything else on top of what it is, what their
Yeah.
mortgage would be. So again, to be seen, it will be market specific, right? So we're in New Jersey. It's like a different world. And I
Yeah.
talked to my friend in Missouri. It's like he's 120, 150,000 people. He doesn't know a case, right? Where here, we know a bunch of people. So
Yep.
we're almost like we're in different countries, as per state. And
California is the same way. I totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. I guess my question wasn't framed very well. I was thinking about your next acquisition, right? Are you in kind of pause mode? Like you're trying to figure it out, or are you like making offers in May?
We're actually, You
Well, I was just going to say, so we did take a small pause when everything started hitting for our family, and we maybe took 2 weeks, and we were just like, okay. But Jason and I never, for mindset wise, I went family, he went business, and Jason never took his hands off the pulse.
Okay, good.
So after those 2 weeks were set, and we were set with family stuff, and we were set with business stuff, and we brought everything home, closed our office. We're passively, what do we usually say? Passively, aggressively passive. We're aggressively
Aggressively
passive.
passive. Oh, I'm going to steal that. Aggressively passive.
always looking.
Yeah.
We always look at the news. We always look at what real estate's doing, and we always have our hand on the pulse.
Yeah, so we went all in to make sure our current properties
Of
were
course.
fully operational at the highest level,
Yes.
right? Look at every part of the business, right? You start dissecting it because now you even have a little more time, so you start getting out literally the magnifying glass and looking at all operations, right? We wanted to keep people employed. We wanted to be safe with tenants. We wanted to make sure that we were giving tenants the best way. One thing that came up that I would have never known without asking was some of the tenants were having difficulty applying for unemployment and their stimulus check because they had no internet access.
Oh.
And so it happened a couple times, 3 or 4 across a couple hundred units. And that's enough to say, okay, well, I wouldn't have known without asking that question. So we opened up the leasing office where they could schedule a time, come in and do that. And now it covers them on that basis so they
Look
can
at
get in there.
that.
But so you have those things where you have to have a communication open, because I think sometimes they make it a them versus us with landlords and tenants, but it's everybody's in this together. Like, how can we make this a great place to live? We do have a property under contract. It was pre-COVID. We went back, we got a negotiation on it. We got a discount. And now we have a number of addendums that lead us out, COVID addendums out there that lead us out because with state reopenings and other things out to September closing. So ultimately by then, we're either the world's gonna be blown up or we're gonna be in a point where we're going to be on point, right? So
you're going to know
gives us a lot
one way or the other in September.
Exactly. So, and that will give us clarity where we're not pushing to something, but doing that and just having provisions in there where, if something happens that's out of the control of us or the seller, it's only fair that we both can have a different choice to make.
And I think no matter where you are in real estate, whether you're a seasoned professional, whether you're just getting in, like, don't stop. If you're just getting in, maybe educate yourself a little bit more, talk to more people, get a good mentor. But for those who are in it, deep in it, keep your eyes and ears open. This is not the time to just stop.
No, I couldn't
not just stop.
Couldn't agree more. If you're in it, right, you're doing deals like both of us are, keep going.
Yes, like even saying the word pause, we didn't really I said we paused, but it wasn't even really a pause. It was more like okay, this is happening. What's our new systems for everything? Because we're really big on systems. Okay, systems are in, systems check, go, keep on going. So don't pause. This is not a time for pause. Maybe a little bit of reflection.
Yep.
But no pausing.
I like that reflection because so it's amazing how similar our stories are, right? First off, I'm a quarter of your size, right? We have about 200 units. March, what would it have been? March 15th, which was a Saturday, I think. I had a day where I actually got my property manager on the phone because my stuff's 2.5 hours away. And we went through all of our tenants. We found 20 or 25 that were kind of high risk, right? They were in retail or restaurants. Yep. We're like, okay, let's watch them. We're going to waive. We're just going to work with people because we want to help. And then you're right. We didn't really pause the business. I certainly lowered my prices I would offer, right? And we just locked up a deal last week for 3 single family homes, kind of side by side. So, but to your other point, if you're new to this game, right, you're getting in because you're excited. I strongly recommend you take the next 90 days and just watch. Because lots of cities or states are opening differently. Forbearance is going to have some impacts and not others. It's a messy market to write your first offer today, is my opinion. Would that be fair?
Very fair. And I'm going to give you a little tidbit. So with everything that's happening, there's no schools are open, no daycares are open. So I am going to say thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to let Jason take over from here. Our little just woke up.
Oh, cool.
So thank you so much. I'm so honored, so grateful to be on. Yep. Jason, take it away.
Good.
Take it away.
I would do my best for things not to collapse over here. No. But on that front, I agree. The one thing, if you are new listening, your one point that you should take is you can listen, but ask questions too, because now is the time to start building up and allowing people to know that you're there. If this is where you're going all in, sometimes people wait for this downturn to happen, but no one knows when that actually happens. And so by the time you wait, then it starts going back up, and now you're waiting for the next one. Here we are 5 years later, and I was screaming from the mountaintop, 2 years back to people that you have to get out there and start talking and being your brand and being yourself, because when things get crazy, people are scared. right? So no one's going to say, let me trust you now, because you haven't gone. And if you're in this position, that's fine. Start today, start talking to people, start understanding what they're doing, start learning, start asking questions, and start being, relevant. And that will lead you to your next step, wherever that comes.
Yeah. So one more question about real estate, and then we're going to talk about the Jason and Peely project. You indicated earlier that you keep your finger on the pulse, or actually I believe that was your wife that did that. So I'm just curious, what do you see, right? When you look out into your crystal ball, which I'm sure you have handy, what do you kind of see coming? What scares you? What gets you excited? Do you even think that way? Maybe what do you see coming?
Yeah, I honestly don't.
Okay.
I can only control right now. I prepare.
There
We
you
do
go.
things right now for we're looking at ways to keep heads in beds, right? So leasing's still been aggressive, so we've been aggressive pushing those units. We've also done some things looking at leasing that it would be a cleaner part to keep people in units. So we're seeing 60 days out that we have a unit coming up where potentially a tenant moving out. We're offering a release special, which we hadn't done in the past. Just things to keep the property occupied, so we're not having capex hits. So we were we had stopped capex projects. We've opened those back up. We were making sure we were just doing it safe. So we're conditionally keeping. And so my way to keep pulse on is being very active in the communities. I set Google alerts for certain terms like rent help or tenant protection or things like that can help tenants, and passing along to the management company, being ahead of other things that are signs for unemployment or other points in the markets. Just so daily I'm getting updates that I can look in and see if there's some relevant content. But I'm not, it is. I can't really predict. No matter what I think, it's going to be wrong, right?
Yeah.
So I can prepare my best way to have the ability to pivot as need. By just continuing to just build out a good team around us.
Very, very cool. Well, let's switch gears. What is it? Did I miss the name? Is it the Jason and Peely project? Is that the correct name, or did I mess it all
correct.
up? Awesome.
Yeah.
And that is your YouTube channel, Jason and Peely project?
That's correct. It's our podcast and our YouTube channel. So we have a bunch of content going on both there. It's been great. We actually treat it as our channel, like an HBO or a Fox, and then we have a number of shows that go underneath. So we have Multifamily Foundation, Real Estate Foundation, Mothers of Multifamily, Fit Rich Life. They all fit under there. So we have different days that align to different points. So generally we'll have an interview on Monday, on Monday will be Mothers of Multifamily. On Wednesday, we'll have another interview topic. Some of our Second Cup of Coffee, which is a live show we do daily, Monday through Friday. Some of those episodes will transition over and become some episodes on the podcast. So keeping it relevant, but really just keeping it talking about fulfillment and how that fulfillment aligns between us setting our mind right, getting our bodies right to take on this, and then now looking at how we want to use that in terms of our family, our finances, our faith.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing in the kind of health and keeping your body right, because none of this kind of wealth creation or being rich or whatever you want to call that means a hill of beans if your health goes.
That's right.
I at 30 years old looked up the food chain in my organization and realized everybody that was a vice president or above was out of shape, addicted to drugs, and on their second or third marriage. And I'm like, I don't want any of those things. So why don't you, when did this mind shift happen for you? Because it seems pretty recent, but maybe I'm not, right, to the Jason and Peely project.
We've always been persistent in our ways, right? And it's always learning and growing and building into that point. We're self-actors, motivating our own paths. And, Peely had a farm at one time that she started growing hello berries back in that. I started open restaurants, started and sold a brewery, done our construction business, some other things. So we've always been highly motivated to be impactful and always about being in shape. Maybe we're being a little more vocal about it. I like doing a lot of things that test me. And, if you want to come along with the journey, I'll run 100-mile races, do things, ran 500 miles last month. Yeah. So things like that. Yeah, I'm open to just try to discover.
I'm sorry, Jason, did you say you ran 500 miles last month?
I did. Yeah, I did. So
what's that? 15 and a half miles a day. That's the average.
Yeah, we actually did it was called the Calendar Club. So day 1, I ran 1 mile. Day 5, I ran 5 miles. Day 10, 10 miles. Day 20, 20 miles. Day 21, 21 miles, 22 miles. So every day I increased a mile all the way through the month. And then I had run I think I'd run a 37 miler on the day before I started the event. So it came out to about 515 something miles there. So
wow.
keeps us active, keep us pushing. Yeah. So
I
fun
guess
event.
so.
That's what we like. That's part of the thing though, but it goes, you find in those races, just like life, right? Like your body can do it.
Yeah.
Your body can do it, right? So my foot was swollen, but it was really my mind, right? And it's always like those things, like you have a moment where your mind just says, oh, you can stop. Well, you could, but you could just take one more step, right? You could just take 2 more steps, could just get to that tree, get to the bridge.
Yeah.
Then you turn around, you're done, right? And that's a lot of things, right? The ability for us to take action and get things done is generally all in our mind from taking that first step. Because generally, once you start get going, it flies, right? It's like a train, a train starting to take off. Well, it doesn't fly out of the gates. You know, it's not a Tesla going to 60 in 0.2 seconds, right? But once it's going, you can't stop it for a mile.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing like you and your activities. Once you're going, but it's you literally just getting the pendulum moving, getting the momentum to swing in your favor. And that's where you can really create the growth.
That is pretty awesome. So the other thing I saw, I think it was on IG, you've started, or I think it was Peely, and maybe you started with, right? It was unclear, but the 75-day hard project. You want to talk about kind of what that is? And
sure.
I know others have done it, but we
did it actually. We did it a year ago, and we did that, and then we did phase 1 and phase 2, and there's another phase 3 that starts in a couple of months. But it's just a way for us to continue to just position ourselves to build mental fortitude. It's 75 days straight. Where you eat clean, you drink a gallon of water, you work out twice a day, both 45 minutes, one being outside, no drinking, read 10 pages, and take a progress pic. And it's just a way that you think, well, that's going to take a lot of time, but you find ways to position your day so you get your time back, right? Because now it leads to, you have to be decisive in your actions, because there's no time that you can waste. Yeah. And there's no forgiveness. If you miss a day, you start over.
Yeah.
So for us,
exactly. No excuses.
Exactly. So for us, it got to the point where we just wanted to get back on track and do some things, and no better time than now. Right. And and that goes with quarantine. A lot of people are waiting for something, some sign that they should go do something, but there's not one, right? There's no like rainbow that's going to come out of the sky. It's going to be your moment. You just say, I'm doing it now. And I mean, we decided on Sunday, well, let's just do this again, that we just go out there and do it. And it rolls.
Yeah. So having completed it, I am actively looking at it right now, just given it's the mental thing, right? Most physical things are mental first, long before they're a physical problem. So having been through it, what turned out to be the hardest thing? And then what day did it become a habit? Because once it's a habit, it's far easier. Was it day 12, 14? What are those two?
There's a certain point where I don't know if it ever becomes a habit in terms of some of these things, because sometimes it becomes a point where everything was hard in its own right? So some days I was working on twice a day before that, so that wasn't always necessarily hard, but some days it is, right? And then in terms of that, some days it's drinking the water, some days it's trying to keep to make sure you're on your clean diet. Other days, I'd listen to a lot of audiobooks, but here I'm reading 10 pages. Some days it's not doing the reading. So it's all in that point. You get to a point here when it's just like the running. When I have I'm 400 miles in and I'm all these points, it gets to the point where, okay, I only got whatever it is, 4 days left, 5 days left, but I'm now going to spend another 4 hours away from the family, 4 hours out there. So you're just trying to keep your mind occupied, because there's only so much of a podcast you can listen to, or so much things, or sometimes there's silence, right? And even with the running, it was just choosing a route to go. I was running, 7 towns away in one direction, back in this way. And it's just getting your mind to continually understand that you just have to push through that one spot, right? So you'll have up days, and a great day will be followed with a down day, but you just have to know that you won't know a good day if you don't have a bad day, right? So when that bad day comes, it's going to go, right? Yeah. And it's just like the sun. If you didn't know the sun come up, there wouldn't be a problem when it's dark out. But now we know the sun comes up, that it's not great when it's dark out. Yeah. And for that, it's always, you're constantly learning, and you learn more things about yourself, because it's the days you don't want to do it that you do it, right? Yeah. And that you just say, okay, I did it. Awesome. Wasn't that bad once I got to the end of it.
Awesome. Well, folks, hopefully by now, somebody I follow is Jason in Peely. You need to do yourself a favor. Jason, how can people follow you again? We hit it earlier, but let's hit it again.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. So, Instagram, Jason Yarusi and Peely Yarusi, follow us on pretty much most, social channels, but go over there. We've got a lot going on. And Jason Peely Project, you can find us on, any of your podcast players out there.
Thanks, Jason. This has been so much fun. Thank you very much for giving me a little bit of your time, buddy.
Thank you.